You are listening to the Savage FINcast, Episode 9, The Man, the Mystery, the Drool, an interview with Josh Eichorn.
Chicago. A criminal mastermind called Overlord held our city in his terrifying grip. Ordinary cops were losing the battle against Overlord's super freaks and mutants. Then, a miracle happened. When I found him, he had no memory of his past. I helped him find an identity and a life. Now we have a fighting chance. Now we have the dragon.
This is the Savage FINcast. Back again, Episode 9. I'm Jim Purcell.
And I'm Craig Olson.
And
I'm Raven Perez.
Raven's our new host. You're not sure if you can do this monthly with us, but you think you're going to be able to fill in once in a while? Is that?
Do it as often as I can. Whenever you guys fall short, I'll be there. So just be there to help out. I'm a hardcore Savage Dragon nerd. And actually, it's weird to say that I've been there since issue 1 because I was there for issue 1, but then I had that huge gap, like a 40-issue gap. And then I leap forward from issue 20 to Savage World or something crazy. So it's weird because I was totally there. I bought issue 1 in a grocery store, and it's like one of those guys that's been there from the beginning, but then there were huge periods where I just wasn't able to keep up with it. So yeah, it's weird place, but I love it. It's one of the best comics it's the best comic being printed right now. So I think it'd be cool to just chew the fat with you guys about it.
Well, it's always good to have someone else who's really enthusiastic about Savage Dragon and Erik Larsen and all that. I mean, it's good to have you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Just so listeners know, I think Adam's having a tough time getting on at this particular time when we record. He's had some changes with work schedule and stuff like that, and we all know Gavin is on the other side of the pond in England, and so we usually record at 10 at night Eastern time, and that's some ungodly hour, 3 or 4 a.m. over in England. So it's hard for him to get on. So I think it's a nice mixture having 3 hosts and 3 voices talking about these things. And we asked Raven to join us, and he graciously accepted. So we're happy to have him.
It's a pleasure. You guys do awesome stuff, and anytime I can, spread a little excitement about Savage Dragon, I'm more than happy to do so.
Cool. So should we get into the news?
Let's do it.
All right. First news item for this episode is Megaton Comics website is up. And Megaton, for those who don't know out there, was kind of the first publication where Erik's Savage Dragon showed up, and it's Erik's earlier version of Savage Dragon. It's not the same dragon that's in current continuity, but it's cool nonetheless. It's Savage Dragon and Vanguard, and I think Youngblood made an appearance. Frank Fosco's Ethrian, and help me out. Who are the other guys in Megaton?
Megaton is one of those things where it's just it's kind of a magical thing for me because it was one of those things you always heard about, the dragon before dragon.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess, I don't know the characters very well, other than Vanguard, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a gap in my reading as well. Like he said, it's just something that people always talk about, and I have a vague notion of the covers, but that's about it.
Yeah, it was published by Gary Carlson, he's the co-creator of Vanguard and has he's written Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Vanguard backups. He's done Big Bang comics. He's done a bunch of writing for some of the back stories on Savage Dragon, and like I said, published some of Erik's earlier work before as Erik was becoming a pro. Same thing with he published some Rob Liefeld work, Angel Medina, Frank Fosco, and I think Rob Liefeld even referred to Megaton Comics as the grandfather of Image.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So basically, Megaton Comics, I think really 5 or 6 issues came out, and it was all during early '80s, and they had 3 or 4 different stories each, and it had these different characters in it. Anyway, this news item is about the website's up. I don't know why he's decided to put one up, other than just good memories or whatever, but it's basically a website that just kind of lists all the characters that appeared, shows all the comic covers for Megaton Comics. It's pretty cool just to check out and see all the old stuff there.
It'd be interesting if they're trying to resurrect it in some way, some new anthology maybe, or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought would be cool, having an omnibus of all the Megaton comics or whatever.
Well, not even a reprint. I mean, a reprint would be great if there was some kind of reprint collection. But I was saying, I think Megaton as a concept may still have legs as a anthology book of young creators, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think there's the name, I think, may not have the resonance it may have once had, but I think it's a good name for a comic, and something should be done with it, in my opinion.
I agree. Well,
even if they just used it, just to get these characters more in people's minds, it's still cool, just because it is one of those things that, when you're just getting into this, like I said, I had that huge gap, and when you start to, get back into it, you see the dragon with the small fin, and then you understand that Vanguard was part of that, and you see the image of them fighting, and it's kind of it's this weird thing, you have to find out for yourself. So it'd be cool to increase awareness about it,
Yeah, you get Dragon as Paul Dragon. You get Angel and Smasher. You get Mighty Man. I think Mako's in there.
It's amazing how much of the old series really impacted, or I don't know, impacted is the right word, but it still has. You can see the roots there.
Yeah. I mean, Overlord was the Bronze Man, I think, back then. I think Bloop's in it still. There's quite a few different characters, and you can pick up a lot of the reprints in that. What was it called? The Savage Dragon Archives. It was a reprint back in the.
It was it was more than a reprint. It was was the art redone? Was it in color? I don't think I've ever picked up that series.
No, it was just a reprint of the Megaton kind of books, and I think graphic fantasy books too that he did.
Right.
Someone's gonna go on the boards and be like, "No, wrong. This is it." But basically, it was Megaton Comics. But you can pretty much pick up most of those Megaton comics for pennies a serving on eBay. Maybe the dragon appearance on the cover of him fighting Vanguard, I think might go for some good money. But most of the other ones you can pick up pretty cheap. But anyway, so the Megaton Comics website is up. It's at www.megatoncomics.com. Imagine that. And it's a small little website, but it's there, and it's kind of cool to check out.
It's funny, even as a website, it kind of has some retro design going on.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's pretty basic, but it's pretty fun. And then the second piece of news is Erik Larsen will be at the New York Comic Con, taking place October 11th through the 14th of this year. You can get tickets and information at their website, newyorkcomiccon.com. And I know Raven and I were just at the Baltimore Comic Con last weekend. And that was a good time. Erik was there. That was the main reason why I went. And I didn't know Raven was there. I think we were probably in the same line together. And I probably, for whoever knows, stared him in the eye and didn't even know it was him.
We were. I could swear, I could swear on my mother's grave that you were the guys holding up the line. I was like, those such and suches.
And we probably were. I met a fellow who goes by the name Hanzo on the Savage Dragon boards. We were both, 1 and 2 in line waiting for Erik, and Erik didn't show up right away. He was like an hour late, And it was kind of fun, though, because I got to sit there and chat with this guy that I've only talked to in, forums before. And to actually talk to someone face-to-face, or at least hear their voice and talk to a voice is pretty cool. And I had a fun, even though we were sitting there waiting for Erik for an hour, I had a fun time talking to this guy and chatting up Savage Dragon and, kind of like what we do here, but, while we were waiting for Erik. So it was a good time. Erik brought a bunch of original artwork. You can kind of fill in what I'm missing, Raven, but
it's really, I mean, it was really, that was what was so cool about it is, when I got there, I had to, what's funny is I didn't know he was an hour late. So now I'm 100% sure that you and Hanzo were in the front of the line because when we got there, we showed up right at 10 and then it took an hour to get through line.
Yeah.
So we came rolling up. There were really only like 2 people in front of us, 2 or 3 people. And so we stood there and it held up for quite a bit. But once I got up there, I was looking at the picture being drawn and I was like, oh man, that's somebody's super lucky. That's going to be an awesome commission. I got to come back and see it finish too. And then later Hanzo puts it on the message board. And I was just like, oh man, it's freaky. It's freaking me out.
Yeah.
But it was neat to see his stuff. I mean, wouldn't you agree, to see it up close? It kind of, you don't realize there's detail in there. He gets picked on a lot. There was new stuff, recent stuff.
Yeah. And
people like to criticize and say that he's knocking it out real quick or whatever else. But, man, that stuff was blowing my mind.
It is. He had pages from issue 30 and from issue 150. I saw covers to some of the trade paperbacks, and he was selling all of these. He had
Supreme covers.
Yep. He had profiles from when he ran the individual character profiles. He had the Home Run Pies ad. Do you remember that one?
I saw Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Savage Dragon versus Megaton Man stuff, which, like I said, when you read that comic, you don't think, oh man, that comic was a looker.
Yeah.
But that was awesome art.
Yeah, it was. It was.
A double-page spread.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
And
you guys are making me super jealous that I don't go to cons.
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing is every time I see Erik at the cons, I'm like, do you have any pages from the next issue? And he always kind of brings them out or whatever. And this time he had photocopies of all of, his quick, sketches, what do you call it?
Roughs?
Yeah, his roughs, and they're real rough. It's basically almost like
doodles.
Yeah, but he went page by page and described to me what was happening, who the characters are. You can make out who it is, but they're real rough, and he just will rough it all out and then kind of almost draw it in ink. It seems like.
And it was cool to see him draw because you see the crazy hand gesture, pictures of it online and stuff, and it's one thing, but to see him. He's drawing this picture for Hanzo with all these zoom lines, and it looks like precision work, and he's just got a ruler and the pencil held upside down, it looks like, and it's cool. It's a cool experience. And he's down to earth. It's funny because he made that Twitter post about how he felt some artists at Comic Cons walked around with pretentiousness.
Yeah, like an air about him.
And I can totally agree. There were things that, me and my girlfriend, she had money, $300, burning a hole in her pocket, and she was dying to buy some stuff. Mm-hmm. And, there were some people just so rude.
Really?
And not even just shy, because somebody was like, well, I think, they're artists, they're shy. That's true.
Right.
You run into that. But, I mean, rude, outright rude. And it's just so cool, because when you meet Erik, he's super down to earth,
Yeah, I mean, you can just talk to him and stand to the side and chat his ear off, and it seems like he enjoys talking to his fans. At least every single time I've been there to one of these cons and talked to him, I've always had a good time.
I've really got to make plans to get to a con he's at just to meet him once, at least.
Yeah, definitely. New
York's probably as close as he'll get, but that place has got to be a zoo.
It's not. It is, but it's not too bad. I've been to New York Comic Con before, and it gets packed, but. I've seen him there too, and it hasn't been that bad.
And accessible, he had a line because it was the beginning, but later you could just walk up pretty much.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hold up the line, so I actually was like, hey, yada yada, and then took off. And I came back later, and there was like just 2-3 people just standing. It wasn't super crowded. It's good. It's cool.
Yeah.
You get to make some time. It's neat.
Well, that's interesting. It's just to know that he's a lot more accessible than I imagined. That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll make a better attempt next year. Maybe I'll make a serious attempt.
It's definitely worth it. Even like
Savage FINcast live from Comic-Con.
Yeah, it's that's someday maybe we can do that. But
that would be awesome.
Just to see his original work, it's amazing. And flip through these like pages he's selling for like $4,000, knowing that you'll never own one, but to actually hold it in your hands and look at it and check it out and see how it's made, it's cool. And then on the back of some of his pages, he's got all these different scribbles and like test drawings and stuff like that.
I didn't even think to flip them over.
Yeah, if you flip them on the back, he's got a lot of funny little things going on back there.
Next time, I guess.
Now you know, insider tip, man.
Next time. It is just to see that, like I said, if you get to do two things, if you get to see him draw, which is kind of awesome, and you get to see the original art up close, yeah, even if that's all you get done at the con, because honestly, I went super last second. I didn't have any plans or really money to work with, so that's what happened. I just got to see him draw. I got to look at the original art. It was still worth it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Any fan should do it.
Definitely. So I think that's it for news for this week. So we're excited to talk to our next guest, who's been credited on more issues of Savage Dragon than anyone but Erik Larsen himself. And we're happy to have him here to pry into his mind and find out what exactly he did on the book to get all these credits. Thanks for joining us, Josh Eichorn. Is that how you pronounce your name, Josh?
That is correct, yes. And thanks. It's good to be on a podcast.
Did you ever think your life would lead to this?
Heavens, no.
It only goes down from here.
Oh, Lord.
So your first credited issue is Savage Dragon number 6, I believe, where you were called a drone from Sector 7G. I think that was around 1994. How did you get to that point? How did you meet Erik and get involved in Savage Dragon, and what did you do?
Well, I officially met Erik 20 years ago in December, and I met him at a comic book store. I just recognized him. He was actually wearing an Extreme Studios jacket, and being an incredible geek that I was at the time, I kind of came up to him and was, hey, how's it going? And one of the things he mentioned was he was doing this character contest, and he needed some help going through his mail and getting stuff, and so I volunteered to go help him read mail and go through and find characters. And after a week or two, he realized that I wasn't such a bad guy, and he offered to hire me as his assistant.
Cool. And the character contest was the kind of create a character to show up in the pages of Savage Dragon, and I think the winner was like Jimbo the Mighty Lobster.
Jimbo the Mighty Lobster, yes, that's
the Mighty Lobster. So your job was kind of sort through the entries, or?
Yeah, I looked at more entries than Erik did. That's for certain. I showed him all the best ones, and he just was so busy at the time. So many offers and agents and TV show offers and all kinds of stuff, and just getting Image under control. So he needed some help, and goodness gracious knows why he thought a 19-year-old could help him. But hey, the rest is history.
He must have been like what, in his early 30s then, about?
Actually, he was in his late 20s. Erik's 10 years older than I am, and so we've sort of kept a good balance in that. It's easy for me to remember that way.
It's so looking back on that though, it's so crazy for someone in their late 20s just to come into like all that fame and money and like that whirlwind, like you said, people making him offers. I'm sure about that time was like the cartoon and all that.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I look back, when I finally turned 29, I remember thinking, good God, what would I have thought if some 19-year-old kid was, looking at me like I was something really special and wanted to work for me. I can hardly even imagine.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, was Erik in like a studio, or was he like working out of his house, or?
Well, Erik had gotten an apartment because, of course, his house burned down in the Oakland fire.
That's right.
They were rebuilding the house, and he was staying in this very nice apartment in Oakland, and it was it was obviously temporary, and there was a lot of other things going on with house planning and that sort of thing. So it was definitely in progress.
Yeah, and it was basically like him like working alone. Like was like there was no other. There weren't any. It wasn't any kind of like studio guys, right? Or
no, that was sort of the thing with Image at the time, and everybody had their studios, and Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld, they all had their studios, and Erik's always been a solo artist for the most part. He can certainly work with other people, but in terms of his majority of his work, he pretty much likes to be alone most of the time.
Right. So like, all right, so take us back to like the Create a Character contest. You're going through all the entries, and you're kind of just, are you tossing out the ones that just you don't even think will make the grade, and giving Erik just kind of like a narrow down version, a pile, or how is that working?
Much. Yeah, pretty much. There was a lot. I mean, the problem was there were thousands upon thousands of entries. I mean, it was, a lot of people, they were all looked at, and, all you out there in podcast land, your entries were given definite attention. And, but there were just so many thousands. I remember when the deadline finally came, I went to pick up the mail at the post office box, and they had 29 boxes, those big mail dump boxes, and it
holy crap.
Yeah, it was, and that was, and then the next day it was 12 more, and then the next day after that it was 5 more, and it was insane. And then we actually took a picture of Erik piled up against these boxes, or the boxes piled up around him, and unfortunately the picture was either didn't come out, or it was lost, or something like that. So we were going to print it in the comic, and it just unfortunately just didn't happen. So
man,
that's
so
nuts.
much. It sounds like so much. It was such a different era back then. It was just how much response there was. It just blows my mind sometimes just to remember that how big Image and everything back then was.
It was huge, and I remember the one thing that Erik was upset about was his timing wasn't so good with the releases of his books, and Wildcats #1 got 1 million orders, and he never got the 1 million copies, and he was always a little disappointed about that. But still, 600,000 is that's a lot, and I mean that's more than he'll sell in. Well, let's not think about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, nowadays the #1 selling comic probably sells less than 100,000, or right around 100,000. So it's amazing to look back. And, those guys are like the Beatles of like the '90s in comic books.
Yeah, it really was. It really was quite a time, and it was. I mean, there was just so much going on, and there was some connections between the other studios, and but not as much as you might think.
Yeah, none of the other guys popped in or anything like that, or.
I'm trying to think who I first met. I talked to Todd on the phone once or twice, and he, of course, was crazy, and he needed some help to find a storage space for the Spawn Mobile, which was the drag
that hot
racer.
rod, the drag racer. Yeah.
Yeah, which was funny because it was not actually. It was such an old drag racer. It was not. It was just painted, and apparently the tires were flat, and it never even ran. But
You've just destroyed such an illusion I had in my head of that thing.
Yeah, I know.
Well, it was. I remember Todd called me and he asked me, "Listen, bud, I need some help. We need to find the storage space for the Spawn Mobile."
That's insanely accurate too.
Oh, Erik and I, we've honed our impressions over the years, believe me.
So, beyond the character contest, what else were you doing for Erik? Were you just kind of running out doing random chores, or how are you assisting?
That was essentially it. I ended up getting his bagels once a week, and picking up the mail and doing all kinds of different stuff. Well, the thing that was most exciting for me was when I actually got to start filling in blacks, because Erik did not want to fill in blacks. It's when you're actually drawing, it's extremely tedious, and
right.
And of course, the more he learned to cheat, and the better a cheater he got, the more blacks he made. So, but I think here's a story that has not seen the light of day. The first time he let me fill in blacks on his work, it was the cover for issue number 1 of the regular series. It's the very tough-looking, biker handlebar mustache cover. Yeah. Well, there were two things. The first was that I ended up shaving down the fin a bit, and I don't think I even told Erik that. But I didn't mean to. But of course, here I was doing my thing, and I was never done anything like this before. But he, so there I was at his board, and I'm being very, very, very careful, and I had a Pepsi with me. And I was drinking Pepsi. I drank Pepsi back then. Yeah, this is worse than you think, actually. So, so I was concentrating so hard, and I had a sip of Pepsi, and it's not that I even spilled Pepsi on it. It's that I drooled on the cover. I literally drooled on the cover.
No.
Yeah, and I shouted out, "Oh my God, I don't believe it!" And Erik just starts. He comes and goes, "What?" And he just starts laughing at me.
Here it is, like the first issue, first cover of the ongoing series, and you're already destroying it.
Yeah. Well, and we got it off, but it's funny because if you look at the actual artwork, you can see that there are some very slight streaks on it.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's still there. We didn't have to white out anything, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Your DNA is on the cover of Dragon #1.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of DNA. After a while, I think I was spitting.
Drooling on the whole book.
That's right. Yeah, it was that good. The cover was that good. I was drooling on it.
So you actually did some actual artwork. I mean, you were basically doing black fill-ins, but that's something you did.
Yeah, I don't know if I would count that as artwork.
Yeah. You can replace you with Photoshop these days.
Yeah, these days, absolutely. And
bucket fill.
Exactly. Well, and he doesn't have an assistant these days, so there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, if there was ever any lines or something where you just go, wow, that's a really, really chunky black. It's like that was me. That was me screwing up.
And was that doing that? You were like, "Hey, Erik, can you get me a credit in the book?" Or
yeah, after a while, yeah, I wanted to be credited. I wanted something because after a while too, I was editing. I was doing his letters page, and I was going over some of his stuff and doing some editing work. I'm like, well, I'm kind of your editor. He said, no, you're not my editor. And his wife was credited as the editor at that point. I'm like, well, she's not the editor. If anybody's the editor, I'm the editor. He said, no, you are not my editor. Like, all right, fine. So, for those who don't know, that when the initial series was recompiled as a trade paperback, there were a few pages added, and so there's just one very small thing in the end when Dragon's sitting there and there are books sitting around, and one of them is by me, and so
check that out.
Yeah, it was called I think Trial by Fire or something. He was like, just come up. What's the title of a book? And I don't know. Where do you want an actual book? He said, no, just come up with a title for a book. About Trial by Fire. And so he wrote that in. He said, well, who's this by? I'm like, how about by me? Ah, yeah. Because at that point he was like, you are not getting a credit for anything. You don't do anything of value around here. So,
you just drool on my books.
exactly. So it ended up that I thought, this is my one shot. I'm never going to get in a comic book. This is it. And
little did you know.
Little did I know. And eventually he broke down, and that's when the insults started.
And so we're, almost 15, 20 years later, you're still getting credit in the book. I mean,
Yep.
how many years did you actually work with Erik? It was from 90. Go ahead.
I was with Erik from beginning of 93 to June of 95, so 2.5 years. 2.5
years, and now we're in 2012, and you're still getting credited.
It's not a bad investment.
I think it's probably the longest running gag in comic books history, I would say.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that.
It might go up there with like the Yancey Street Gang gag with Fantastic Four for second place in length of a long running gag. But how does that feel?
His whole idea was, he said, I'm going to make you my Alfred E. Newman, and because I think you're totally worthless, so here I'm going to come up with something new every month, and for the longest time he still doesn't. He never tells me what it is. He just says, you just have to wait and see.
So I take it you still buy the issues to check it out, and
oh goodness gracious, no. Erik still gives me Erik and I are still friends, and
I
see him. Yeah, I see he lives in San Francisco now, and I live in Oakland, and
right. So and he just moved, right?
But we see each other still fairly, and we keep in contact. Like I went out the other night for pie at this place that he and I have gone to have pie, and I told him I was there, and he said, hey, if you come here late at night, you can, sometimes they'll give you a free piece of pie when you're leaving. And his text response to me was, you bastard.
So that's really cool that you guys have kind of kept in touch and still kind of hang out and shoot the shit.
Oh yeah,
it's a really nice story, actually.
Yeah, I was only sorry that I was just so wiped out that I didn't get to go to his housewarming party. But yeah, we're still good friends, and he actually came to my birthday party this year, which was when we realized it was one of the first times that he and I have hung out on an event that I've invited him to. He's never come to anything of mine that I've invited him to, and this is the first time. And there's actually a picture of it, and unfortunately, it was out of focus.
That's hilarious.
Yeah,
I mean,
need someone else to take your photographs.
Yeah, invest in digital.
Yeah, well, actually, it was on my iPhone, but for whatever reason, it just didn't focus right, or whatever. And I couldn't tell because I was drunk.
So I'm curious. You sort of implied that you don't buy Savage Dragon anymore. You get comp copies. Do you read comics at all anymore?
Rarely. Unfortunately, they're just so dang expensive.
Yes, they are.
And there's. I mean, I hate to say this, but I really feel like in some ways nobody's really doing anything that different. Even when I remember when Frank started doing Dark Knight 2, it's one of those things where you're like, ooh, this is so exciting. It's like, oh man, you're just. It's just not very exciting anymore, and I would be more than willing to be wrong, but at the same time, it's like when I left Image, what I was reading was Hellboy, and there was Starman, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
Starman's good.
Yeah,
good stuff.
And Erik used to make fun of me. Erik likes story, but he's really more interested in good artwork. And
right.
Starman had sort of an uneven run.
Yeah. I like Tony Harris.
Yeah. Well, and actually, believe it or not, Tony Harris was one of the guys we were looking at to do Vanguard back when I first came on. He said, well, what do you think of this guy? And I was like, it's kind of cool. And he's like, I can't stand his stuff, and I'm not going to hire him. He didn't say that.
What an alternate universe that would have been.
Well, at least the Vanguard would have had a consistent look to it, as opposed to the 6 issues of everybody different.
Yeah.
And what is the story behind that? Why was there someone different on every episode of that? Do you remember? Or
Yeah, I do. we had hired Tom Coker to be the guy on Vanguard. His samples were really good, and he was going to be the guy. But he turned out to be such an incredible flake, and he would deliver pages to us by hand and leave it with the door guy, so he wouldn't have to answer for why the pages were 2 weeks late and why it looked like crap, and and so I mean, if anybody remembers Vanguard #1, which I don't know if I do, it was not a good-looking issue, and his samples were way better than that.
Yeah.
But I also Erik told me the other day. He said, "Yeah, Tom Coker, he's kind of come around finally, and his stuff's pretty good." And I was, I'm just sure he was, just yanking my chain.
All I remember is Joe Mad issue. It's the only thing that stands out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Rick Leonardi was pretty good too. I like Rick Leonardi. Yeah,
Rick was good. He made. I mean, the problem was that everybody except Joe made Vanguard really ugly, and part of it was that he wasn't exactly good looking anyway. But yeah, this when Rick did it, he was still doing Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool. And Erik did a lot of adjustments to it, and there was a lot of making the dragon bigger, and just this and that, just kind of touching up, because I don't think that Rick even really referenced any of the other stuff or the dragon.
That's always bad.
Wow. So
he's got like the wrong fin. He makes him like 6'5" instead of 5'10".
Exactly. Yeah. So it was okay. So the dragon needs to be beefier and shorter. And it was just Rick just. I think Rick was, since he was still doing Spider-Man 2099, I think he was on a 2-week schedule at that point too. So he banged that out, and it was probably not his best work.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we were also talking about that was the time when Freak Force started as well, and Vic Bridges had, I was like, well, why? I remember thinking, man, Tom's stuff looks so much better. Why don't we switch? Why don't we put Vic on Vanguard and put Tom on Freak Force? And it turned out that Vic was actually the one who was probably the most consistent and easiest to work with.
Yeah, and he pumped them all out pretty much, in a consistent manner. I thought he did a really good job.
Yeah, he was actually really great to work with. Really nice, very very friendly guy. But I think he ended up leaving comics entirely just because it just didn't fit with his
religion
beliefs.
Or something, right?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah. That was a wild time too, because you guys had like Dave Johnson on Super Patriot, for two runs of Super Patriot, 2 minis, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, the initial run of Super Patriot was really one of the coolest comics ever, and that was on when Keith started working for us too, and and he really was writing to impress us as well. And then as Freak Force went on, he was doing Super Patriot, and then he was doing Freak Force, and Freak Force started to. He was getting later and later, and and the stories were kind of rehashing stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's always been the thing with Keith is he's he'll really knock it out for you at first, but then it's like it starts flaking and that kind of thing. So yeah, but then the second Super Patriot series was, we had the issue 1 in the can for a year before we even solicited, because Dave was so slow.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, Keith's story was not really up to snuff in terms of the first and second series, and in my opinion, and some people loved it, but it was here Dave was really on top of his game, and Keith was kind of like, oh yeah, I gotta smoke another pack of cigarettes, and and maybe bang out an issue of Trencher that nobody's gonna read.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I loved Trencher. I
forgot all about it.
Yeah, there were some great moments in Trencher.
That's when he was doing his off the wall art style that you just had to really stare at.
Yeah, Giffen's got Giffen's still got a pretty interesting art style when he draws by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always loved that stuff, and I was always sorry that I never sent him my sketchbook to have him do me a drawing of Trencher.
So, speaking of sketchbooks, do you have a lot of like original Dragon art from Erik or from other artists that worked on Dragon books, or?
Oh, I did end up buying a sketchbook, but I think I only got about 3 or 4 things in it. Erik did the first opening page, which is it's a 2-page thing, and it was the Savage Dragon has ripped off someone's head, and I think it's Erik's head, and it says, and he lettered it in. He says, "Draw good stuff in my friend Josh's book, or I'll rip your head off and boot it to the moon." So,
That's awesome.
I think I only got about 3 things. It's been so long since I looked at it. I know that Chris Iliopoulos finally did me one, and it just said, it was one of his cartoon characters, and it said, this huge voice balloon, "Josh, you suck."
Is it like a Desperate Times guy or something?
Oh yeah, Desperate Times.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. I wanted to send it to Dave, but I'm sure he never would have done it for me.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like, when did you stop working for Erik? Like, how did that wind down? Was it just?
Well, it was a dead end job, and he was one of the first people to tell me that, because there was no place for me to go. It wasn't like it was extreme where hey, this guy's going to be moved over here and he's going to be handling all of our merchandise that we're giving away and that kind of
right.
stuff. No, it's just and Erik is such a control freak that he would never let me do anything. I think there was one issue of the Deadly Duo where he actually kept some of my dialogue.
So were you like constantly like pitching him stuff, and he was just like, "Nah, I don't think so."
Pretty much. I mean, there were, I would write responses to letters, and then he would come in and go, no. And so what's funny is that Erik and I are actually very much alike now, in that when you spend 2.5 years with every day for 2.5 years with somebody, you're going to rub off on each other.
Right.
And Erik I'm sure would deny it up and down, but there were things that I would say that he now says, and there are lots of things that he says that I say, and so so there was some crossover there, but there was nothing for me to do other than be his assistant, and getting paid $8 an hour is it's really great, but after a while you just kind of have to move on.
Yeah.
And I ended up being I really wanted to work at a summer camp, and so I took that job, and so we all went to Zachary's Pizza, and he invited the guys from the International House of Color and Al Gordon, and we all had pizza celebrating my successful run on Savage Dragon.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun time while it lasted.
It was, and I still love going over to Erik's because he's got all the coolest toys, quite literally. And he's got Walt Simonson's original artwork run on Thor, and it's like they're just perfect reproductions of the boards, and it's like, oh man.
Yeah, he's got those whole issues of Commandy and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, well I know it was one of the things is I was never a huge fan of Kirby, and I mean I certainly have an appreciation for him, but he was just he just was over the moon, and he was he would get I don't know, he got like a double page artwork that he has framed. It's either Double Dinosaur or Commandy or something like that, and it's that's the best thing for him.
Oh, that's really, really awesome.
Yeah, if you could find Into the Heart of the Atom with by Herb Trimpe doing on the Hulk, I think that he would probably die a happy man.
Yeah, it seems like it's between Herb Trimpe and Jack Kirby is like, that's like the two guys that he always, goes back to that seem like to be his favorite all time.
Oh yeah. He loved those fists of Kirby that were, a pack of Twinkies, the 4-pack.
Yeah, yeah. He actually started drawing like that too during the Savage World issues in the 70 to 80 issue 80, which is pretty funny. Yeah. So I don't know if I have any more questions. It was a pretty cool interview.
I got
Do you guys have any other?
Yeah, I was just curious. I had no idea you were so integral in the character creation contest. So maybe none of these characters stick out to you, but it was funny to me because, for one thing, Jimbo the Mighty Lobster won, which was incredibly awesome because I know, I remember there were follow-up letters where people were like, why didn't my character win? You picked a joke and all this. And I was like, get over it. He was an awesome character. But what was funny is they did run pictures of the other characters, and I remember the two that stuck out to me were Arachnus, which later that guy, I think, did get his own book. It never went anywhere, but it was like a spider guy with metal robot arms. And then there was this old man in a patriotic costume. But you could see his diaper, and he had no teeth. Just saying anything.
Yeah, we got a few that were pretty funny. Yeah, there were a few that would definitely made us laugh, but and we would keep the best ones for a time until somebody else knocked it out or whatever. But it was there were some ones that were funny. But the one I always think of in that letters page is that we had Pyramid Man, which was and he had a head that was a pyramid. And and the rest of his body looks like stones from a pyramid, and he's smiling.
I remember just talking to Erik and him saying that a lot of the entries that people would tie in their character's origin with Dragon or Dragon's origin with a character, and Erik was like, "That's out the door. Sorry, I'm not tying my guy's character in with something you own."
Yeah, well, what was funny about that too was when Erik did an annual with what was his name? Jeff. Yeah, I can't remember. And it was written, I believe, by Bill Messner Loebs, and so his character that he crosses over with the dragon. He says, "Oh, if I remember, you like to strap on the feed bag," and Erik asked him about it later. Says, "What was that all about?" He says, "Oh, because he remembers him, before." And it was like, what? You're a professional. You know better than that. And you can't have your character be tied into his origin. You just can't do that. So, and I remember Erik too was always very. He was always. I asked him what the origin was, and he wouldn't even tell me. And that was the thing. He was so secretive about it. He would not even tell me. But then when they finally came out with the origin story, it was cat's out of the bag, and now now it's part of the storyline, and now it's so. Yeah.
What did you think about the origin? Was it what you thought?
It made sense to me, and it seemed like it was. One of the things I love about working with Erik and just talking to him is he really makes it all work. He is. I remember one time he got pneumonia. And I think he was working on 4 things at once, and he was in bed, couldn't get out of bed, and he was just sick as a dog. But then I saw him, about a week after he was finally better, and he said, "Okay, check this out." He says, "So this is this, and this is this, and this ties into here," and I'm like, wow, I'm really impressed. And he was so excited about it, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I just tied it all together. I did it all." And I was like, "Man, you did. I'm so impressed."
I mean, it seems like he just lives for comics. That's that's his love, and that's all he wants to do and focus on, and that's his enjoyment.
Thank God.
It's pretty, I mean. It's we're pretty lucky, I think the guys that listen to this Fincast and us hosts, he's our favorite creator, or at least one of it, and it's pretty cool to have, a comic book where there's 180 consecutive issues by the same guy, written and drawn, you don't see that. It's pretty amazing.
And the other thing too is that Erik has said that he's I asked him how long he's going to do the dragon. He says 301. And just, because he will, Dave Sim is in his sights, and he will not rest until he has the until he has that. And honestly, there's no way that it's ever going to be matched by anyone. It's not possible.
No, definitely not. And especially with like today's creators, it seems like they just have a hard time putting out one issue, every couple of months. So
I always joke that where people are like, "Why do you like that?" And I'm like, "I like this book." I said, "Because you mark my word." I said, "This is going to be the last printed comic."
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to stop until he hits that magic number, the quitting number.
That's right. Yeah, and I always, I always admire him so much. And last time I got together with him, one of the things I said is, I've had my own struggles with what do I really want to do with my life, and I said, I think it was one of the worst things in my life is to be around you, of all people, who knows what he wants so much and is so single-minded about it. It's he's just got, man, he that's what he's doing, and that's what he's interested in. And yeah, he's got these other things, like he's working on a screenplay right now, which I promised him I would not talk about. But
oh no,
he's super successful at what he does too. I mean, everyone knows in the comics community who Erik Larsen is, and he's sold millions of copies of his comic. I mean, the guy, he did what he wanted to do, and he was successful at it.
Living the dream.
Yeah, and still doing it. And what was interesting is I met Frank Miller at some signing thing, and I was lucky in my life that I met all of my heroes, when I was about 20, and all my comic book heroes, oh wow, Frank Miller, and and I remember saying something to Frank Miller about Erik, and he didn't even know who Erik was, and I felt like, just an ass, for even, because hey Frank, you should check this out, and Frank Miller, like he needs somebody, like, needs a hole in the head, but then finally Erik met him at a convention or something, and we ended up sending him the entire run of the Dragon up through, I think, issue 20 or something like that, and I don't think Erik really ever heard back from him, but it was, I kind of have the feeling that Frank would really appreciate something of this caliber and of this ilk.
Well, he had that pinup in 100, right?
Yeah, he drew a pinup of Dragon in issue 100.
That's right. Yeah, I have to look at that one. It's funny because Erik will give me this big stacks, and sometimes I don't even get around to reading them. I'll look at what my name is, and it's like, itching like a man on a fuzzy tree. Okay.
Well, we were just talking about this before we got you on, about like some of the ones that were out there, and there was that one from like 179 we were talking about, which was like a reference to Rick Santorum. Do you know the one you're talking about?
Actually, I don't think I've seen that one.
Well, I'll read it to you. It's kind of nasty.
Right,
it's probably the worst one I've read. It says, Josh Eichorn, the frothy mixture of lube and fecal matter that is sometimes the byproduct of anal sex.
And it's the first time he's getting to hear about it. It's awesome.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
No.
Well,
I'm guessing it's Rick Santorum some way.
Yeah, Rick Santorum, he's very, I guess he's, totally pro-marriage, gay marriage. Right. And he really pissed off a gay columnist in Pennsylvania named Dan Savage, I believe. So Dan said, I'm going to pay this guy back, and I'm going to name, this term after him, And so he started a website, and that's, if you type in Santorum, that website comes in saying Santorum's a frothy mixture of lube and blah, blah, blah. So it's funny because you read that, and if you knew it, you know what it is. But 10 years from now, when you read that, you're not gonna get the joke, and you're just gonna be like, man, that's just nasty.
I had no idea.
What is that?
So when I read that, like you hit the LOL, I literally laughed out loud. I was like, oh my God, this is the best.
It's so vile.
The other ones have been, like you said, kind of goofy and weird, and you laugh a little bit, and then
like song lyrics or something.
Yeah, and you read that one and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, that one's pretty awful. That's really funny. For a while, I think one of my favorites was Bicycle Seat Sniffing Sicko. That was one of the earlier ones. The intense gun-toting loner seeking for the perfect high tower from which to pick off complete strangers. I think that was another good one. But for a while, Erik, it's funny because Erik and I, we're mostly on the same wavelength with some things, but there were some times when I could get the feeling he was trying to see if he could shock me, or see if I would really like raise a stink about something. And he was, because I think for a time he was not really sure if I was gonna, when I left, it was, well, maybe I'll take him out, that kind of thing. And when I didn't balk at anything, I think he was like, all right, okay, I'll keep him on, but it was. But I think because of, just my religious upbringing, he was wondering if I was going to, say, hey, man, that's not okay. I don't like that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then there was the one with the, after Princess Diana, he said Josh Eichorn has some pictures of Princess Diana that he's selling for a really good price considering the trouble he went through to get them. I think that was it. I was like, ooh.
He's pretty good at doing poor taste stuff sometimes, like some of the stuff like on the hardcover, like signing pages and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's like sometimes just like, oh, I can't believe you went there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It is. It's
yeah, well, he has an incredibly filthy sense of humor, and that's why when we get together, usually we end up laughing for about 2 hours straight, and he just cracks me up. And I remember when we first started working together, and we'd go to these, WonderCon or whatever, and he'd be on these panels, and he wouldn't even say anything, and I'd be like, man, what are you doing? You're really a funny guy. I don't know why you're not saying anything. I'm not really interested. And then all of a sudden, after I stopped working with him, he tells me one day, he says, so I go to these panels and I just start doing stand up. And it's like, well, it's about damn time, because he'll just slay the audience. He's really, and he'll go for as low a blow as he can.
Yeah. He's a funny guy. I mean, I've probably met him 4 or 5, maybe 6 times at conventions, and he's a really nice guy. He'll sit there and, he'll let you talk his ear off for like a half hour, and, his eyes will light up if you start talking like Kirby or comics or just discuss Savage Dragon. Like, he's a real nice guy. He's a class act, I think, all the times I've dealt with him.
Well, of course, every time he reminds me, he says, I'm also a total dick. It's like, yeah, okay.
We know.
He's strongly opinionated, and he's not afraid to state his opinion. I mean, he gets himself in a lot of trouble on message boards, I think, or whatever, from other people, and he's just keeping it real. He's like, this is the way I feel, and he doesn't pull back any punches. Sometimes, like I said, it gets him in trouble, but, I think that keeps him interesting. And
yeah.
It makes him endearing, really. It's
and what he's gonna say is what he feels. He's not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah. Well, and that was, I remember when I was first working with him, was when he sent that very long letter to Peter David.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one was. Whew.
Those are the best.
Yeah.
I still reread those because like the letters column, I don't know. He's always talking about how important it is, and when you're going through those old issues, man. That was the jewel, that like flame war before there was a flame war.
That's right. That was when it was CompuServe boards, and and I actually ended up going on some of those boards, and I started to engage here and there, but it was like, oh no, I don't want any part of this.
Did you used to hand type all those letters that came in?
Yeah, I did, and this was before.
And he wouldn't give you.
We couldn't even
give you
email
credit
them
for
yet.
that. Yeah.
Oh, well, that was part of my job.
That's what he paying you, so you don't need a credit.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, too, is that we would end up faxing it to the image office, and they had to recopy it, which was even worse.
I love the
That's
past.
Yeah. Well, I remember one time I put in Pittsburgh, California, because there is Pittsburgh, California, and they changed it to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I remember the person wrote in, and like, by the way, my letter was from Pittsburgh, California, not Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's like, yeah, good luck with that.
We'll rectify that right away.
Yeah, we're gonna print an apology. We're gonna get right on that one.
Redacted.
Yeah.
I think my favorite moment when I was at Image was when I saw, I think, Ripclaw #3, and somebody was credited as wishes he was loved as much as Josh Eichorn.
It is funny because, they're always like really insulting, yet that's that credit's sought after. I was reading, I forget which issue it was, but someone was like, will you credit me like Josh Eichorn? And the answer is just no.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to get in on the ground floor, and and my name will live in infamy. Although I am disappointed that there is no Wikipedia page for me.
We got.
So any of you listeners out there, you want to start a Wikipedia page? You just
we have a Savage Dragon wiki, and every your credit listed on is listed on it.
Yeah, I've been meaning to review those. I just to see, unfortunately, I always thought I was one of the only Josh Eichorns in the world. Turns out there's a bunch of them, so because it's an unusual name, and it's even misspelled in German. So I was, but no, unfortunately, right. I'm not the only one.
I thought it was like it's so crazy. It's crazy getting to like have the interview here because I thought you were like John Day, who I also didn't realize was a real human.
That's right. I've never met John Day, but that I know, it's really funny.
I just thought you were just this hilarious name for jokes.
Yeah, but I know Erik said John Day used to go to like some comic shop he frequented. I wonder if that's the same comic shop that you went to, but. I don't know.
I don't remember, but yeah, I never met John, unfortunately. I remember thinking, when am I ever going to meet this guy? Geez, he's in your book every month, and John Day. It's like I have no idea where he is now. Just he's in my book every month. There you go.
It is amazing though to like longtime Savage Dragon fans. Like it's all the fun of the book is that I always flip to that cover page to see how you're going to get insulted. I always look for like John Day somewhere in one of the panels.
Mm-hmm.
He always has a letters page, and he always has like a backup. It's for a comic book, you get your money's worth. It's like an institution. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and it's really, I hate to say it, but it's one of my life's better accomplishments, and I had very little to do with it.
Do your family members know that you're in this book getting insulted month after month?
My family members do know about it, but nobody ever really. I mean, everybody assumes, well, he hasn't talked about it in 5 years, so must be over. So they don't care.
At times, to your that's a benefit. 179.
Yeah, right.
It's not a good one for mom to. Let's see what Joshua's done today. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I remember, actually, Erik, when he was doing some Marvel stuff, he tried to get me credited, and they said, but he didn't do anything.
That's crazy. Like, they actually that picky about it?
Yeah, they were.
Our artist is like, hey, credit this guy. I would think they would just be like, okay.
Yeah, well, then there's another reason why Erik won't work with Marvel anymore. Well, that's not the. I'm sure that had almost no reason to anything to do with it, but hey, why not?
He stopped after they wouldn't credit you.
He's like, that is the straw.
Yeah. All this other creative crap you're doing, I don't. That doesn't bother me so much. But when you just disrespect my insult post, then we got a problem.
How dare you not respect him?
Oh, and I believe actually Carl Kiesel wrote me into an episode of Superman two issues of Superman. And he was writing. I was a terrorist at one point, and then there was some. Then I was one of the. He came up with his own name for me. It was Alien Pustule. And
what is it about guys that just like to insult you?
Well, it's everybody likes to gang on.
Yeah, the comic creator Whipping Boy.
That's right. Yeah, well, and that was one of my titles, Whipping Boy. And I really was. I was rightly so, the Whipping Boy.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a great interview, Josh. I don't know if Jim or Raven, do you guys have other last questions? Or?
No, I thought it was great talking to you.
Well, it's been fun.
It's cool to confirm your existence.
Yes, that's right. And although I should tell everybody, don't add me on Facebook because I won't add you.
I think a lot of Savage Dragon fans out there are going to get a real kick out of hearing your stories and actually hear the voice to the credit. I know we've had a lot of fun talking to you. We've learned a lot. We were really looking forward to getting you on here.
Well, it was my pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we wrap up this episode of the Savage FINcast. So many ums. Next episode, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the long-awaited arrival of issue 181 of Savage Dragon.
And the solicitation for that is, lo, there shall come an ending. The invasion is over at a price. The stunning aftermath. Who says lo? Lo, there shall come an ending.
Wrestlers.
What does that even mean?
Wrestlers and preachers.
Which probably features the most misleading cover in Savage Dragon history, or up there.
Top five.
Definitely.
So we'll see you next week to talk about 181, which I look forward to. It's been a while since we had a new issue of Savage Dragon.
The Savage FINcast is a part of the Gutter Trash Network and the Image Addiction family of podcasts. It can be found at either fincast.guttertrash.net or imageaddiction.net.